Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining Sierra Club Iowa Chapter's weekly Lunch and Learn. Every Friday at noon, we go live with an environmentally focused topic, and today we'll be talking about nuclear waste canisters and storage. So, we will jump right in. All right. So, first, we'll start with kind of what is nuclear waste canisters? What are they? They're large sealed metal containers used to hold spent nuclear fuel. The highly radioactive waste left over after nuclear power generation. And it's important to know that canister is the inner sealed metal container that directly holds the spent fuel, while the cask is the large outer structure made of steel or concrete that provides radiation shielding and protection. These canisters are usually stored in above ground concrete or steel structures, often used at former or operating nuclear sites, and their job is to contain both radiation and heat from the spent fuel inside, keeping it isolated from people, hopefully, people and the environment. Um, and so, kind of in short, it's a temporary home for this nuclear waste. And so, inside each nuclear waste canister are spent fuel assemblies, which are bundles of long metal rods filled with small uranium dioxide pellets that were once inside the reactor producing power. And so, if you remember, back in September, we did a lunch and learn on discussing uranium. And so, fuel rods is made up of tiny ceramic pellets stacked inside large metal tubes or rods. And then those rods make up that fuel assembly used in nuclear power plants. So, kind of a throwback there for you. Um, but once the fuel is no longer used for energy, it's extremely radioactive and continues to give off heat for thousands of years. Those fuel assemblies are loaded into the steel support baskets inside the canister, which are, again, support them and separate them and keep them stable. The basket also includes neutron absorbing materials like boron to prevent any chance of nuclear chain reaction from restarting. And once the fuel is loaded, the canister is then filled with helium gas. This helps with heat transfer to transfer heat and prevent corrosion. And then it's welded shut to completely seal the environment. And once it's closed, these canisters cannot be easily opened or repaired. The canister and cast system is engineered to be structurally robust and radiation tight. So cutting into it without damaging it, the fuel or creating a leak is very complicated, expensive, and incredibly dangerous. So again, these canisters are designed for temporary storage, not permanent disposal. They're meant to hold the fuel for decades until a long-term solution becomes available. Sorry. Oops. There we go. Had to find my slide again. Um, And so, kind of getting into a more local level discussion, Duane Arnold near Palo is Iowa's only nuclear plant. It shut down early after the 2020 derecho. And since then, the decommissioning has moved really quickly. So, in just 20 months after it closed, they transferred more than 1,800 fuel assemblies or fuel rod bundles, um, which were all the plant's spent nuclear fuel. So they moved those into 30 large stainless steel canisters. Each one stands about 18 foot tall and holds 61 fuel assemblies. These canisters are now sealed and placed inside above ground concrete bunkers on site, forming what's called an independent spent fuel storage installation, or ISFSI. However, the fuel isn't going anywhere. The US still has no long-term nuclear waste repository, so the waste will remain at Duane Arnold indefinitely. So typical reactor operators change out about operators change it out about 1/3 of the reactor core every 12 to 24 months, which means that fuel rods in a nuclear reactor are usually used for about 2 to 6 years to generate power. And once it's spent, the fuel is still highly radioactive and produces a lot of heat, so it can't just be stored anywhere. After removal from the reactor, spent fuel is kept in spent fuel pools for about 3 to 5 years or longer to cool down. And once it's sufficiently cooled, the spent fuel can be transferred into dry storage canisters, which is kind of our main topic today. So these canisters are originally certified for around 20 years, and many canisters have already passed that mark. Utilities can extend their license with inspection, but eventually the waste must be repackaged or moved, though there's nowhere permanent in the US to put it as of right now. So nuclear waste remains radioactive for thousands of years, posing a potential risk to the public if not properly contained. Many generations in the future will be required to monitor, protect, and come up with solutions to this radioactive material. And so, while dry storage canisters are designed to be safe for decades, there is still several risks and concerns we have to be aware of. So first, corrosion and cracking can develop over time, especially in humid environments. Once these canisters are closed, they are difficult or even impossible to repair, and so any damage could be very, very challenging to address. Second, there are security and transport challenges. Moving these highly radioactive canisters is risky, and while they're stored on site, they must be continually monitored to prevent accidents or unauthorized access. And finally, it's important to remember that there is no permanent solution, no permanent disposal site or recycling process here in the US. That means that temporary storage sites, um, as you can see, kind of scattered all across the US, are there for the long term, for as indefinitely for what we can see right now. Um, so you can kind of see here on this cropped map, um, these are ISFSI sites for across the US. Every dot represents a location where spent fuel is stored, often on-site at decommissioned or operating nuclear plants. This shows just how widespread this temporary storage has become. And the reality is that nuclear power creates some of the most hazardous waste, leaving local communities and countless future generations responsible for managing it for thousands of years. We need to take a hard look at research around health impacts, water use, and cost, and put people's welfare and the environment first, rather than corporations whose main interest is profit. Until we stop producing this dangerous waste, our communities and ecosystem remain at risk. And so, oh, there we go. And so we've talked about how spent fuel is stored in the dry casks. These are above ground steel or concrete containers sitting on sites like Duane Arnold. But this diagram shows a little different idea called hardened on-site storage, or HOS. Unlike the open air casks used at most sites, HOS design places the canisters inside reinforced concrete bunkers or partially underground modules, like you see here. These are built to resist natural disasters, fire, and even attacks. So currently, Duane Arnold does not have hardened storage. Its canisters are stored on a concrete pad with minimal shielding on or protection beyond the cast itself. And again, and it's worth noting that Haas hasn't actually been tried or tested anywhere, but because it has that extra layer of physical protection, it appears to be a better option than what we're currently doing. So a hardened system like this, again, would be better protection for the public by providing an extra layer of containment and security, keeping radiation more contained and reducing vulnerability to accidents. Um, and so again, while this is not a permanent solution, Haas is the safer, more responsible way to store this highly radioactive waste, especially since it may be on site for decades or longer. Um, and so this final slide, sorry, I lost my screen. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Last slide, kind of what can you do? So next week, the Utilities Commission is holding a public information meeting on Tuesday, November 13th at 6 p.m. at Hawkeye Downs Expo Center in Cedar Rapids. This meeting will focus on NextEra's proposal to restart the Duane Arnold nuclear plant, and it is just an informational meeting, but hopefully there will be a chance for the public to ask questions, share their concerns, and make their voice heard about nuclear energy, waste storage, and the future of Iowa's energy system. It's incredibly important that we show up, stay informed, and speak up about public health, environmental safety, water usage, and long-term community wellness. So come on out, bring a friend, be a part of the conversation because your voice truly does matter. And so we hope to see you there. And with that, we will bring it to a close and we will see you all next next Friday for another fun lunch and learn. Thank you so much, everybody.